At this point, we've been able to associate each of our users to a certain post. That is, a user can be able to create a specific post, and different posts contain or belong to different users. Now in this video, we're going to implement a feature that is going to allow us to help the user to sign up or create an account so that they can be able to create posts. Now the way we're going to do that is by, first of all, creating an application specific to user accounts. And within that, we shall write tests that are going to guide us into how to make these users. So let's go ahead and try to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is to head over to our code. And within our code right here, the first thing we're going to do is to create our accounts app. So remember, an app is just to separate the functionality. And in this case, the functionality that we want to keep independent is the one for creating user accounts. So what I'm going to do is to pull up my terminal right here. And within here, I'm going to begin by creating an app. So I'll do this with Python, manual.py, and then start app, and I'll call this accounts. And once I've done that, this is going to go ahead and create an app called accounts within our root project folder. Now the first thing we need to do is to register this within our main app. So I'll just go within the apps config and then copy the accounts config. And once I've copied this accounts config, I'll head over to our main project folder, which I called my blog. And then within our settings.py, I'm going to look within the install apps section right here, or the install apps list. And then I'll just basically add the config class. So in this case, it's located within the accounts app, and this is within the apps module. So I'll just say apps, then I copy or paste. I'll just paste the accounts config right in here. Now after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and try to write our tests. Now when you look at our tests, each of our app contains a specific tests module. So you're going to go to our accounts app, and within our accounts app, we're going to have our test module right in here. So what I'm going to do is to head over to our accounts test.py file, and we're going to write a bunch of tests that are going to allow us to implement this feature of helping our users sign up. So I'm just going to come here and create a class. Now I'm going to create this class, and I'm going to call it the accounts test. So this can be account sign up test, or let's just say account creation test. And of course, this is going to inherit from our test case class. And once we do this, then the next thing is going to be to create some of the variables you may need. That's within a setup method if we need some, or if we don't need, then there's basically no need for us to have a setup method, because it's the one that's going to actually help us to initialize this step. So the first thing we may need to do is to test if this actual route or this actual template where we actually sign up a user exists. So I'm going to create a test here, and I'm going to say def test. And in this case, I'll have to basically state what we're going to test. Now in this case, I'll just come and say def test, and then say sign up page exists. So we're going to test if the sign up page exists. So in this case, we're just going to test if it exists, and this is going to take in self. And once we take in self, then the next thing is going to be for us to create our response client. So this client is going to allow us to create requests and then make requests to these specific routes, and then be able to return the appropriate responses that we shall use for testing. Now the first thing we're going to do is to create this. So I'll just come and say response, and this is going to be from our client class that's given to us by our test case class. So we shall access this with self with client, and then we shall call a specific HTTP method. In this case, it's going to be get. Then in here, we shall specify the route, and the route is going to be the slash. So we can choose to call this slash whatever URL. I'm going to basically use a reverse. So you can either use the hard-coded URL, or you can choose to use the reverse to help you do that. So I'm going to use the reverse to just help us be able to dynamically place in these URLs without us having to memorize them. So what I'm going to do is to go ahead, and at the top of our code, I'll import the reverse function. So I'll do that by saying from Django URLs, we are going to import our reverse. And once we've done that, then instead of having a URL hard-coded in here, what you may come and do is to say reverse, and then right in this function, we provide a unique name that's specific to a URL. In this case, I'm just going to come and provide this as sign up page. And once we have that, then the next thing we're going to do is to do our different assertions. So the first assertion we need to do is one that checks if this page exists. If a page exists, when you make a request to it, it's actually going to return a 200 status code. But in case it doesn't exist, of course, we know we're going to get the 404 status code. So the first thing we're going to do is to check if this page really exists. So we shall do that by saying self.assert. In this case, we're going to assert equals, so we're going to compare the status codes. Now in this case, we're going to see if it exists, so we're going to say equal. That means it should return a 200 status code. So the first thing we're going to do is to provide the response status code for whatever will be returned from the response. And then we're going to equate this to the 200 OK status code. I'm going to import the HTTP status class from Python that's going to allow us to access these status codes. So to do that, I'll just come and say from HTTP, we are going to import our HTTP status class. And right here, when I come right here, all I'm going to do is to just call the HTTP status class, and then I'll call the OK status code. And this will be able to compare the two status codes that will be returned in this request. So what I'm going to do is to also check if the template that's being rendered for this specific request is going to be for this specific response is going to be the sign up page. Now the way I'm going to do that is by coming and say self, sorry for this, so this will be self, and then I'll say dot assert, and in this case shall assert if the template that is used to render this request is actually our template for our sign up page. So I'm going to do that is by saying self.assert template used, and then in this case we shall say if this is going to be returning our account slash, so we may call this sign up or register.html. Let's call it register. This is going to render our register.html. So once we've been able to do that, now let's go ahead and try to implement this. So of course, during a test-driven approach, what we do is to write a test and then run the test, make it fail, and basically write our code to pass that test. So I'm going to pull up my terminal right here, and the first thing I'll do is to run python manual.py and then test, and this is going to go ahead and going to go ahead and try to run our test. And since our sign up page has not been established, our reverse for the sign up page URL is not actually found. So let's go ahead and try to do this. So the first thing I'm going to do is to go and establish our URLs within our account. So the way I'll do that is by creating a new file. I'm going to call this our urls.py. And within our urls.py, the first thing I'll do is to import the path function. So I'll just come and say from, sorry for this, so it's going to be from Django URLs. It's going to be URLs. We are simply going to import our path, and this is what is going to help us to map our views onto specific URLs. Now once we have this path function, we're going to go ahead and create a list of URL patterns that are going to be associated with our accounts app. So to do that, I'll just come and say URL patterns, and this is going to be a simple list. But within this list, we shall have different URL patterns, and the URL pattern is going to be created by the path function. Now, when we have path, we can specify the route. Now, let's just simply call this sign up. And once we have that, then we can also go ahead and provide the view function. Now, we're going to have our view, and I'm just simply going to come and say from dot. So we're going to import the views module right here. That's where our view function is going to be. So I'll just come right here and say from dot. We're going to import our views. And once we've imported these views, now we shall have access to our sign up view. So let's say register user is going to be the name of our view. So we shall call that register user. And if we're to look into our test, what we're actually looking for is a URL that has the name of sign up page. So we shall have to provide that within our URL configuration or our path. So what we do is to just come and provide the third argument, and this is going to be the name of the URL. So I'm just simply going to paste that name in there. So this is going to be our sign up page. And once we have that, then the next thing is going to be to actually register these URLs onto our main application. So I'm just simply going to go within our blog, and then within our urls.py, that's within our main project, that's within my blog in this case. I'll just come right here, and all I have to do is to add another URL configuration or a path or a URL pattern, and this is going to be on the /accounts page. You can choose it, you can choose to leave it on the URL. However, we're just trying to separate our URLs. So I may leave this on /accounts, or let's leave it to accounts. So once we have it to accounts, then what we're going to actually do is to include this. So I'm just going to come and say include. And when we have include, then we are simply going to include the URLs from our accounts app. So I'm just going to come and say accounts .urls. And once we've done that, I'm going to simply go ahead and save, hoping that our server is still running. Our server is still running. So right here we have no view called register user. So that means we have to implement it within our views.py file. So what I'm going to do is to head over to our URL or our views within our accounts app. So I'm just going to look for views.py, and that will be the one inside our accounts app. So the first thing I'll do is to basically create that view function. So this is going to be register user, or actually we called it, I think we called it register user. So I'll just say register user. So this one is taking a request object, and once it has the request object, it's what it bases on to return an appropriate response. So we're basically going to return, and in this case we shall say render, and then we shall provide the name of that template we want to return. And in our tests, we actually have the template being called accounts/register.html. So I'm going to copy this right here, and then head over to our views, then paste in. So in here, we're actually going to need our request first. So just going to come and provide our request object, and then I'll provide the specific template that we want to render. I'm going to go ahead and save, hoping that our server is going to run. It's reloading. It's now running, but it's telling us that we have no. So this is actually a wrong spelling. So let me try to fix this. So for now, our server is running. Let's try to run our test again. So when you run our test, we now see that the template accounts/register.html doesn't actually exist. So what we're going to do is to create within our root templates folder that we created in the previous videos. If you haven't checked them out, please go ahead and check them out. They are quite helpful. So within our templates folder right here, I'm going to go ahead and create a new file, and I'm going to call this accounts/ and this is actually going to be register.html. So once we have this, then we hope that our test is going to pass. So when I come here, I'm going to go ahead and run python main.py test. And now we actually see that this is running. Our tests are all running. However, we have a warning here that's telling us that our URL pattern /signup has a route beginning with a slash. Let's go ahead and fix that. I think it's in our urls.py of our accounts. Django URLs are actually supposed to be not having a slash, so that we actually have one at the end. So when I run that, we'll save. When we run our test again, we hope it's going to pass without failing. And that's exactly what is happening. Beautiful. So right now that we have our sign up page, let us go ahead and try to put this within our template. So within our base.html, we actually have we have a base template within our templates folder that's going to allow us to basically have a layout that's specific and consistent across our website. So I'm going to go ahead and add one URL. So this is the URL for our home page. I'm going to add one for our sign up. So I'm going to separate these URLs right in here is by providing a name or a namespace to each of our app specific URLs. Now the way we do that is by coming within our main project, and within our main project we're going to access our URLs. Now in this case, what you can do is to provide a third argument, that's the name specific to those URLs. Now instead of having just the URLs being registered onto our main project, we can also provide a name that's going to allow us to separate them within our templates and stuff like that. So instead of just reversing to a specific URL, we can add an additional layer of reversing. So in this case, instead of just reversing to the home page, we can reverse to the posts, and then we reverse to the home page URL. So I'm going to add one more thing here, and I'm going to call this the posts. So this is going to be the posts app, and in here we are actually going to also provide a name, and this name is going to be equal to, so here we shall have our URLs, and in this case these URLs are actually going to be the ones that are specific to accounts. So in this case I'm just going to come and say accounts. So when you go ahead and save this, hoping that our server is running, it's reloading, and everything is working fine. Let's also try to see if our tests are running. So you now run manual.py test. In this case, you see that our tests are also passing. So let's try to also go to our template and see if our template is working fine. So if I refresh right here, seems like everything is working perfectly. When you go to our detail pages, they are also working perfectly. Now let's try to also work on our URLs for basically the sign up. So what I want to do is to just provide this as a URL of sign up within our template. So for now we don't have any login functionality, so it's just okay, but we're going to look at how we implement that later on. So I'm going to just come right here and provide this URL link, and this is going to be the one for our sign up page. So I'm just going to come in here, and all I have to do is to provide our sign up. So when we have this, I'm just going to simply come here, and all I have to do is to provide the name of the URL as we specified it in here within our URL patterns, and that is our sign up page. Now I'm just going to come here, and all I do is sign up page. We hope that this works. This actually will work. Let's save, and when you refresh, you now see that our sign up URL has been shown here. So when you try to navigate to it, you now see that our page has been rendered and it's an empty template. Let's try to write some HTML in there. So you can also try to basically write some text, or basically write tests that are going to influence us into rendering some content here. So what we can do is to basically go to our tests.py, and let me try to look for that. It's going to be tests.py within our accounts, and all I can do is to maybe say self.assert contains, and in this case we can try to basically check if our response contains the words create. So what you can do is to maybe say create your account today. So when you go ahead and save that, let's try to run our tests. So when you run our tests again, in this case it's going to fail because you don't have that within our tests. So if you want to add that within our tests, all we can do is to go ahead and look for our register.html, and all we can do is to first inherit from our base template. So we can just say extends, and this is going to extend our base.html. So when you have that, then you also need to specify block, and this is going to be our block content, because most of all of our web pages inherit from the main template and their content will be within these block tags. Now once we have that, you can just simply provide then h1, and this h1 is going to be the one that's going to allow us to basically have that. So you can say that, you can say h1, and this is going to have our create your account today. And once we have that, then when you go ahead and refresh, of course we're going to see our layout being inherited from, and then we're also going to have our footer, our header, and the content that we have here. So when you go ahead and try to run our test once again, So it's actually create your account today with a capital Y. So let's try to just put it just like we see here, and hoping that this time it passes. We now see that our tests are actually passing. Now there's one important thing that we don't have here, and that is actually test coverage. Test coverage allows us to basically find out how our tests are running on our code and which percentage of our code is being run by our tests. So this is very important as it allows us to be able to understand how far our tests have gone with our code. So the first thing we're going to do, in case we need some test coverage for our code, is to install the coverage.py module, which is an external library that can help us to basically know how far our tests have gone with our code. At this point, we are using a test-driven approach, and it seems like most of what we are doing is being influenced by the test we are running. However, if we have coverage, you can be able to know if our tests are all covered, and this can be quite helpful. So to do that, I'm going to start by installing coverage. So I'm just going to say pip install coverage, and once I've installed coverage, now we're going to change our tests so that we run based on coverage, and then we shall also be able to generate a report that will show us how far our tests have gone, or how many files we have tested, and what do we need to actually test. So once we've installed coverage, I'm going to begin by basically showing you that we now have access to the coverage command within our virtual environment. So we now see that this is going to provide for us coverage for Python, and this is version 6.5.0. If we need to see some help, we can just actually say coverage and then help. And this is basically going to show us all the commands specific to coverage. So coverage annotate source files with execution information, debug, erase, and so on. But right now, the first thing we need to do is to actually run our tests. So if we want to run our test with coverage, what we need to do is to provide the command. So instead of saying Python manage.py test, what we're actually going to do is to run our test command with manage.py, but instead of saying Python, we're actually going to use coverage to run our tests. So we're going to come and say coverage and then run, and we're going to provide our manage.py. So I'm going to provide manage.py, and once we have that, then we're also going to provide our test command, and this will go ahead and run our tests just like you see like that. But the beauty is it also goes ahead and generates a report for us to be able to see how far our tests have run. So for us to be able to do that, I'm going to come and say coverage, and then I'll basically report. So when you have this coverage report, it goes ahead and shows us the tests and the percentage of which those tests have run. So right now we can see that we're actually doing well. 99% of our code has been tested by the tests we've so far run, and this is actually beautiful. So let's go ahead and try to generate you can actually generate your reports using very many ways. You can use an HTML template that has all this by saying, so if we have our report, just like you've seen it here, we can be able to generate an HTML page that can show us this report in detail. So the way you can do that is by basically saying coverage report. Actually, it's coverage HTML, and this will go ahead and generate an HTML file. So it's written within HTML cov/index.html. And when we navigate there, so I'm going to go within our HTML cov folder and then look for that index.html file. So once we have this index.html file, I'm going to open it with Live Server. This is just a simple VS Code extension that we use to basically see what's within our HTML files. It just loads a basic HTTP server that helps us to access this file. So when I open this, what's going to happen is this file is going to be opened, and we shall be able to see the report. So it seems like it's not opening. Let me try once again. So our file is open on port 5500. I'm going to close one of these so that we only have one. And now we can see all the code that we've written. So we now see that our code coverage is 99%, meaning we are actually doing well. And I think the reason that's why this is happening like this is because we are using a test-driven approach, which means most of the code that we're actually running and testing is basing on the tests that we are actually writing. So we're writing tests first, and these tests are what are allowing us to go ahead and basically write the code.